وأهلا وسهلا بكم، وإن شاء الله قريبا يعني سنعلمكم بالمحاضرة الثالثة ونرسل لكم الأوقات واليوم ستضعونه على جدولكم. وحظا سعيدا وبالتوفيق إن شاء الله. أستاذة إيمان سوف تقدم المحاضرة. تفضلي يا أستاذة.
We are very proud and honored to have Leslie Grahn with us today. She has 27 years of language teaching experience at the middle and high school levels and 12 years of experience at the central office level, most recently as coordinator of world languages for the Howard County Public School System in Maryland. Leslie has been a course instructor on foreign language teaching methods and differentiated instruction, and is a frequent presenter at state, regional, and national conferences, specializing in best practices. And she creates resources to support language teaching and learning and shares them through her website. Her website is magnificent. We have her website actually linked to our website as a resource, and we just recommended her website for the state of California for all subject matter teachers, not only world languages. So again, on Pinterest, Leslie is a co-author of the Keys to Strategies for Language Instruction and serves on the boards of NECTFL, NATSFL, and ACTFL. So with that, we are happy to have you here with us, Leslie. And I understand that you are going to have two breaks. So every hour we're going to have about 15 minutes breaks. So yes, you don't get screen fatigue after that. So this is, again, best practices. So it's with you. Thank you very much.
Welcome, everybody. I'm so happy to be back with you. I think the last time I got to spend time with you was back in July. So I hope things have been going well for you in your teaching since then. So today's topic is about engaging all learners in blended language learning. So the idea is that probably at this time of the year, whether you're in a school year like a K-12, pre-K-12, or in the higher ed level in your semester, somewhere around this time you are likely doing hybrid teaching, which means that you're doing both remote students, you're having remote students, and you're having live students. And lots of people are doing what we're referring to now as concurrent teaching. And concurrent teaching is specifically where you're teaching remote students and live students at the same time. So we're going to talk about that because there's some technique to that. There are some best practices around that. And then I know a lot of districts that I've been working with lately are getting ready to shift back to fully face-to-face. And so we've been bounced around quite a lot, right? Since last March, we've been fully face-to-face, then virtual, then hybrid, and possibly all the way back, making the circle complete, going back to face-to-face again. And what I want us to think about today is, what have we learned through this time? What will we keep that we realize is very engaging to our Generation Z learners? What do I realize are techniques and strategies that I want to hold on to from this time? And then also, what types of best practices are there around the idea of concurrent learning and teaching? And so if you haven't met me before, this is my website, www.Grahn, my last name, for as in foreign, lang as in language.com. And on my homepage, if you go there, there is a black bar. If you click on that black bar, those are all of the materials that I've curated and created during the pandemic. So they're very much aimed at the kind of teaching challenges that teachers have been having since last March. Also, you can find me on Pinterest as Grahn for Lang, and also you can follow me on Twitter. And also, if you want to tweet about today's webinar, please tag me as @Grahn4Lang. So as was shared earlier, I have a long experience in teaching in the classroom and also in leadership in the profession. So I do lots of work now in my retirement. I'm not a good example of a retired person because I'm not in a hammock out back drinking a mimosa right now, but instead I'm working with teachers because that brings me joy. And so I love being able to curate and create resources that support teachers through whatever shifts are happening to us in the profession. As a world language supervisor here in Howard County, Maryland, I had a personal philosophy that anytime that I asked teachers to do something that was very new to them, kind of scary, right? Like a big change, I always did my research ahead of time. And so I looked at what was out there. I gathered examples, I gathered templates, I gathered resources for them so that when I start offering this idea of a shift in our practice in some way, they're not starting out from zero. And so you'll notice that very much will be echoed in what we talk about today, where I have collected and created resources for you that you can just take and then adapt for your particular classroom. So here are our outcomes for this morning. We're going to evaluate the aspects of our learning environments to make sure that we're paying attention to participation. So participation has been a challenge across the country, regardless of the level that of the teachers I work with are teaching, regardless of the language. Participation has been a challenge. And so what are some things we can do to increase the level of participation? After all, we're teaching a language and we need students to participate. Also, we're going to think about instructional choices we might make when we're trying to engage our learners. So what's a menu of options I might choose from? And then finally, how can I engage learners in this whole concurrent instruction where I have some students in the room with me, some students tuning in remotely? How do I manage that? How do I juggle having students in those two environments? So here is my website. And so if you haven't been there before, take a look at the URL at the bottom. I actually have put a list of links in a Google Drive folder, which I'll show you in a second. So this link is there, so you do not have to remember it right now. And then here are my Pinterest boards. And again, this link is on that page as well. I have about 200 boards at this point. And since I saw you last, I've added several resource areas on my Pinterest boards that relate to Arabic, and I'll share those with you as well. So here's the link I do want you to copy. So this is one that if someone please will put this in the chat, that'll be great. And so it just has the initials of the organization. So SCATC, and then 03 standing for March and 21 standing for 2021. If you go there, you'll see that I've created a Google folder just for today. And what I love about having Google Drive folders like this is that I can go back and add things. I have a piece of paper here beside me. So if I realize there's something else I want to put in there because you asked some questions about something that relates to another resource that I have access to, I'm able to quickly put that in there for you. So you'll see in the little icons you see on the screen now, there's a document over to the right. That's the links document. So if you open that Google Drive folder right now, you'll see that almost all the things that I send you to for resources are already linked there. So please don't worry about having to copy those URLs. Now, there are going to be times that I send you to do an activity that you might have to grab the URL, and I'll ask my friends who are the moderators today to put those in the chat for you. So here is my general plan for the day, and I have to tell you, 27 years in the classroom, and I've also taught higher ed. Any lesson plan I've ever created never went exactly the way I planned it, but I'm planning on going for about an hour and then doing a 15-minute break so that you're not sitting too long. So please get up, walk around, grab another cup of coffee, grab a snack, take a bio break, and then we'll come back for another hour. We're going to do another 15-minute break and do the last hour together. So that's my plan. This may alter tiny bits depending on how things are flowing. But that's my plan for the morning. And so I'm hoping that you won't have to sit longer than about an hour at one time. So that's my goal. So what I'd like to do is start out by modeling a social emotional check-in. So something that lots of us have been doing since the beginning of the pandemic is making sure that we're checking in with our students to see how they're feeling, right? So how are you doing today? And so if you go online on the internet and you just type in on a scale of, you're going to find lots of pictures like these on this one on the right. So you'll see there's one today is on a scale of bird, how are you feeling? There's on a scale of guinea pigs, on a scale of baby Yoda, on a scale of llamas, on a scale of chickens. There's like so many different ones. And the whole idea is just to do a fun way where we're checking in with our students and seeing how they're doing. Now, since most of you have already introduced yourself initially in the chat, I'm not going to ask you to introduce yourself again unless you have not yet. And so I'd love to just hear, how are you feeling this morning? And so if you'll please put into the chat the number of the bird that best represents how you're feeling. Okay, I've got 2 8s this morning. Okay. Kind of just paying attention. Oh, a couple 7s, the bird with the mouth open. A 2, a 5. Oh, I love 5. That looks like a bird that's trying to show off his beauty, right? 6. More 5s. Oh, you're looking good this morning. Another 5, a 4. Okay, and what's key about using an activity like this with your students is we do it in the target language. So we want to be able to talk about how we're feeling in the target language, and then we can extend the conversation to why. Why are you feeling that way? And so again, possibly putting some phrases up on the slide or on the screen that gives them some beginnings of sentences that they can use to talk about why they chose the one that they chose. And again, this is just our way of, on a regular basis, checking in with our students and making sure that they're okay, especially because of everything we've been through over the last year. Thank you so much for those of you who shared. Okay. So we're going to start out by talking about increasing student participation. And the reason I chose to do a segment on this is one of the areas that I have worked with so many districts over the last several months. It's one of the #1 concerns people have because students have their cameras off, they're not really participating, right? And so what can we do to increase their level of participation in our language classes? And so you'll see here on the screen that I'm going to talk about 4 different types of strategies or approaches we might use when we're trying to increase student participation and get students to engage more. So we're going to talk about affective strategies. So those are more about the environment and relationships. We're going to talk about instructional approaches. We're going to talk about specific participation strategies. And we're going to talk about accountability strategies. How can we make students feel accountable for participating in class? And by the way, without being punitive. So we don't want to take things away, but we want to give them incentive for wanting to participate. So here's what I know. Many of us have been teaching to screens that look like this, where we're looking at a whole lot of blank squares. And it's very difficult because teachers feel like they're just talking out into an abyss and they're not sure if the students are really there because they may be logged in, but they may not actually be paying attention. And so it's been a real difficult situation for us. In our physical classrooms, we're right there with the students, so we can tell whether someone's paying attention to us or not, right? But in the virtual world, this has been a huge challenge. And so we're going to talk about some of the ways that we can make it better to encourage more students to do it. So right away, I'm going to ask you to get ready to go into breakout rooms. So don't do anything yet. But what I'm going to have you do is I'd like you to copy this link at the bottom. This is going to take you to a Google Slides presentation. And based on the number of your breakout room, so if you're in breakout room 3, I'd like you to write on slide 3. And so your breakout room number is going to match your slide number. And so what I'd like you to do in your breakout rooms is have a short conversation about what has been successful in your experience to get students to participate and what has been challenging about getting students to participate. So I'm going to pause for a second so you can copy that URL, or if somebody would like to put that in the chat for me, that would be great. And in a second, I'm going to quit out so that you can be put in the breakout rooms. And let's do this for about 10 minutes. And we're going to talk about what successes and challenges have you faced with student participation. And we're going to be able to look at these slides afterwards because you're going to be able to write on the slides. Okay, so let me quit out so that I can have people go into breakout rooms. Awesome. Okay, so you're going to be sent to breakout rooms in a second, and you're going to go for 10 minutes. So it's currently 9:20. So we're going to return at 9:30 back to the main room. Okay, so I'm going to ask my moderators to help me out by putting people in the. Awesome, thank you.
Welcome.
So take a look at some of the ideas people put up on the slides. There are motivated students, even though it's very challenging. Reminding the students of Islamic values to overcome hardships. So this is difficult, but we can overcome this. Giving specific tasks and limited time to work on it. I love that idea. Use the chat feature to help students be in the task. Using emojis to give feedback and answer questions so everyone's included. Challenges, it's hard to measure students' proficiency and progress instantly. Students don't participate. They keep their camera off, which, by the way, I saw camera off in a whole lot of different ones. They go away either because of a bad connection or other reasons. Lots of students are having issues with that. And there's a problem with cheating. A lot of teachers have been expressing issues with students turning in written assignments, or they use Google Translate and things like that. So let's see. Game resources to get kids to participate. Questions are a good strategy to keep kids focused. Asking students to have a group discussion and the teacher keeps listening to them. A challenge has been cameras off, so we heard that again. And that, how do we know if they're taking notes? How do we know if they're even there? They could be just logged in, but doing something totally different. Using games, the challenge is different proficiency levels in the same room for sure. So there's kids that are more advanced learners in the room, kids that are struggling learners, and how are you meeting the needs of all these kids remotely or in a hybrid setting? Let's see what else we've got. Having routines and expectations has been a success. Using a visual or audio tool like Quizlet. Using Nearpod to level the lesson. Using breakout rooms have been difficult. When you have different proficiency levels, it's hard to manage those. Totally agree. Breakout rooms with specific questions and times and outputs. Using GimKit, Lookit, Kahoot. Again, students are being quiet and shy. You're talking into a whole lot of quiet, like there isn't the chatter that typically would be in a face-to-face classroom. And then I see the thing about wasted time. I just feel like in general, people feel like that remote learning and hybrid learning has just slowed down learning so much that we don't get as much done in our class periods as we would have in the past. Let's see if there's anything else. Helping with the shy students, multiple tools for using for differentiation. The challenges have been turning cameras off. Again, we've heard that multiple times. Making student-centered learning, keeping up with the breakout rooms, and that's a huge problem. Doing lots of interactivities like Pear Deck, Quizlet Live, Word Wall, Zoom polls. So lots of interactive things on that list. And then on the right, really similar ones that we've seen on other slides. Let's take a look at the next one. Engaging students in meaningful themes. If we have them do something that's meaningful, we have a higher probability that they're going to participate in it. Using games, using forms, connecting with their social emotional well-being, which is something we've all been working a lot on. Challenges to using meaningful realia, challenges for using games, because a lot of times they're at a word level, and we want students to be able to do much more than just come back with words. Having kids copying with assessment and all of that, keeping them focused for 45 minutes online, and teaching synchronously and asynchronously. So one little thing I'm going to say, because I heard multiple comments about copying and all of that, what I've been suggesting to folks in terms of writing assignments that you want students to do, and you want to be able to tell what they can do with the language on their own, I highly encourage people to begin the writing assignment by giving students some sort of graphic organizer where they just brainstorm all the ideas that they want to put into their writing piece. So it begins just with a big brain dump. So I'm just going to say, here's all the things I know how to say. Now, when we design these graphic organizers, we want them to have sections in them that add up to what they have to do in the writing assignment. So if I want to think about people and places and times or whatever it is, I want to give them those buckets. I don't want to tell kids just take notes. Lots of kids do not know what you're talking about when you say take notes. So we give them these buckets to put ideas in on the graphic organizers. Then the next night's task is now they, oh wait, so then they come back the next day, and during class, they get to meet with a friend in an interpersonal activity and share the things they wrote down on their graphic organizers. So that way they can do what I call cross-pollinate. So then they can say, well, I wrote this on here. Oh, that's right, I knew that too. So they add it to their graphic organizers. So they get to make their ideas even fuller, and then take it home the second night, and now you create your first draft. That first draft has to include all the things from your graphic organizer. It cannot look totally different from your graphic organizer. You bring your first draft in, you get feedback on it, either from a peer or from the teacher, then you take it home and you make a more polished version of that draft. And so you see, over several class days, I'm working progressively on the same task, but I'm making it better. And what's so important about that is that's where we see real growth in student proficiency. Giving students separate activities each night is not going to necessarily show me that growth. And so people have found that to be useful, where students must include the graphic organizer as part of their assignment, so that you're sure that they're using that to write and they're not just going on the internet and doing Google Translate. Let's see if there's any others before I go on. I think we're past. Okay, perfect. So let's go back to our PowerPoint. Thank you all for sharing. Lots of similar ideas. So I want you to feel good about the fact that your colleagues on this meeting today are all experiencing very similar challenges. So one thing I want us to keep us anchored in is, who are the learners we're dealing with right now? We are dealing with the I generation. We are dealing with Generation Z. What are some of their characteristics? So look at the examples on this infographic. So I'm going to start on the left. So they like bite-sized chunks of information. So they can't tolerate being taught 20 things in a row. They're not going to remember all 20 of those. So how can I chunk down the teaching? How can I chunk down the content that I'm giving them? They like images, they like emojis, they like to connect and collaborate and share, they like to make and create. Make sure that we're leveraging these characteristics of our Generation Z learners when we're thinking about how to engage them in our classes. So that's something we want to pay attention to, is that the generation we're teaching now is not the same generation we taught 10 years ago, right? So these are kids that have been born since the year 2000. One of the most important things if you're struggling with getting kids to participate is to be transparent. So tell students right off the bat, I need you to participate because that gives me important data, because it gives me information about where you are in your learning. So then what I designed for you to do tomorrow and the next day and the next day, I'm using what I know about where you are in your learning to design those learning experiences. You have to remember that students don't understand how you plan lessons. I know when I was a student, I thought teachers were just told what to say. I had no idea that teachers actually customized what it is they were teaching, what they had in their lesson plans because of what they knew about where their learners were in their learning. So I feel like this transparency is key. Let students know you're learning a language. How can I give you feedback about where you are in your proficiency level if I never hear you, right? And so help them understand that this is different than math class or science class, right? You're learning a language, and so your active participation is important because it gives me good data. Going back to our chart here, let's start by talking about affective strategies. So what we want to do is constantly be paying attention to building relationships with students. So this is not something we just do with the first week of school or the first month of school. We are constantly building relationships with students. I want to dedicate time in lessons on a regular basis to build community. That means to get kids to connect with each other, to see commonalities with each other. I want to make sure I'm calling students by their correct name and their pronouns. And this is important. Students will say to you, oh, that's okay, just call me this. No, I'm your language teacher. I should be able to pronounce your name, right? And so making sure that we honor who they are. I want to give students incentives for participating, which I heard a little earlier. And I want to provide alternative ways to participate. The only way to participate is not answering orally. There are all kinds of other ways to participate. So offering those options, because it's not necessary for it always to be a out loud response. So some ways I can do that. I want to welcome kids as they enter the classroom. So regardless of whether they are in person or online, when they enter, I'm just saying, hi, how are you doing? Good to see you, right? Letting them know you're recognizing that you're there. Try to include personal connections into learning experiences. So when you have students doing a task, make connections with the students like, well, how does this apply to your real life? Do you like this? Do you prefer it? Do you don't like it? Like, do you not like it? Like, what's your reaction to this thing? Make sure that you're making personal connections with kids in the feedback you're giving them, right? To let them know, like, oh, and I know you're such a great artist, so this is a great product for you to select, to do, to show your learning. And so letting them know you know them. Check in with individuals, particularly those who are not participating as much, to find out what's going on with them, to show concern for them. Participate in the discussion thread. So if you have kids doing chat, you put things in the chat too, and you bounce off of things students have said, or you're giving students positive recognition for something they added to the conversation. And then I want to make sure I'm recognizing and highlighting exemplary participation, student work, contributions. Remember, we can get more with honey than we can with vinegar. So we want to make sure we're lifting up the positive and not really being punitive about the negative. I want to ask students what interests them. So each time we start out with a new unit, I'm going to say, we're going to be talking about schools. What do you want to know about? And let them tell you what interests them about schools in the target language countries. Instead of us making assumptions about what they want to do, let's ask. Hold office hours and meetups that include social aspects, not just focused on academics. So we want to have little times where we say, hey, today at 3:30, we're going to have a meetup and we're going to play a trivia game in Arabic. So if you want to drop in, you're welcome to drop in. That's how we continue to build community and relationships with students. If time is flexible, at the beginning of class or at the end of class, have students interact like they would in a physical classroom. So, you know, when they come into your physical classroom before you start the lesson, they're talking to their friends around them. Well, what's happening to the kids that are remote? And so how are we making sure they're being able to interact just on a social level with their friends before the actual lesson starts? So here are some examples of things I've heard from people that they've done with students to just do kind of a social gathering with them remotely. So I've heard of people doing a trivia meetup, a virtual book club, a watch party where they watch a video together or a music video. They have an open mic where kids get to sing a song in the target language that they've learned. So lots of different ideas for what students can do that you just learn more about them. You learn about, like, they're very musical or they're very artistic, and how else are you going to learn these things unless we spend time with them, right? And so thinking about how we can encourage students to participate in things just for us to get to know them better. So you'll notice on this slide, I have other ideas and the chat box there. So if you have done other types of meetups with your students, like some sort of like student club or something like that, some sort of event, please put it in the chat box so we can see some other ways you've been building that supportive learning environment for your students. So I will open up my chat. So if you want, anybody wants to add anything, I can see what you're adding. So what are some other ways you've been building that supportive learning environment for students? Social lunch. So these students are just dropping in to have lunch with each other and possibly be talking in the target language or not. Field trips, virtual field trips are so much fun. Lots of people have been using Google Earth, and you do like a flyover of a place in another country and look at the monuments and the famous places and things like that. Watching a film together or a video clip or a section of a film, right? And so again, these are just really simple things that we can do beyond class, where it's almost like a little club type meeting, but it's done virtually with students. And so think about ways we can continue to build those relationships. Thank you so much for those of you who shared. So since we met last, I actually set up a Arabic word wall for you. And so this is a virtual word wall where you can go on and you can find all kinds of lists of vocabulary and expressions for students to use when they're interacting with each other. This is linked in your document. So if you go in the document in our Google Drive, the one that says links for the webinar, this is linked there. So I wanted to share with you some of the newer things I've put together for Arabic since I've seen you last time. Also, if you go on to, and this again is in the document, if you go on to this page on my Pinterest board called Face-to-Face and Online Class Norms and Expectations, I've collected a bunch of class norms and expectations for virtual and hybrid learning in Arabic on that Pinterest board. And I have to give a shout out to George Chawan. He's one of the people who helped me with that. Okay, then I want to think about the types of activities I'm doing with students. So am I doing activities where students are expressing how they're feeling or what they like, and I can now use that to build community? And notice how off to the right I say there, the key is in the why. So we don't just say, would you rather eat chocolate ice cream or strawberry ice cream? Okay, that's interesting, bye, right? No, why? So let's talk about it. Is it because it's cold? Is it because it's sweet? Is it because, right? And so we can add in all this conversational practice around these ideas where they're expressing their preferences. So let me show you some examples. I love Slidesmania. If you don't know about Slidesmania, and I realize I didn't put that as a link on your form, so I'll add that later. Slidesmania is actually created by a single person. She is a woman in Spain named Paula Martinez, and she makes all of these cool Google Slides and PowerPoint templates you can download for free and adjust them. So here's an example of one of her templates she created. It's called Jams and Slides. And again, I'll go back and add that if I didn't already put that on your in your links page, where she's already set up the four corners for you. So now you just change strongly agree, strongly disagree into Arabic. You put the question in the center. I think students should have to wear uniforms to school, or whatever it is. Students write their name on the little circles and drag them to the various sections of the slide to say whether they agree, disagree, strongly agree, etc. And then they go on breakout rooms and have a conversation about it. Well, why did you decide you strongly agree? What is it about it, right? And so again, lots of things that cause communication, that cause kids to find commonalities. Lots of people are doing these activities called would you rather. So would you rather do this or would you rather do that? This is an example that was on a Jamboard. So if you've been using Google Jamboard, you just put the background on it. So this teacher put the background of the would you rather shake hands with a polar bear or penguin. And then across the bottom are some little dots that students write their names on, and they drag them on top of the picture they prefer. And then we have a conversation about why did you say that? Oh, because they're fuzzy, because they're, I like cold weather, because, right? And so again, getting kids to think about their preferences and find commonalities with their friends, and at the same time, communicate in the target language. Here's another example. Would you enjoy playing soccer more than basketball, or basketball more than soccer? Notice how on this slide, the teacher gave them the sentence frame. So they don't have to come up with the sentence on their own. I enjoy playing blank more than playing blank. And then the students just choose what they want to fill in. And as I said, the key is in the why. So now I put the kids that like soccer together, kids that like basketball together. Let's talk about why we like those things. Here's one that this teacher actually used as like a exit ticket. And the reason I love this is because of what's on the right-hand side. So again, it's just a would you rather eat strawberry or chocolate ice cream? But notice on the right, she gave sentence starters. I will pick blank because it is blank, because it tastes blank. And then below that, she started to add in reasons why, because it's delicious, it tastes sweet, it tastes cold, right? And so again, think about how that can widen your students' ability to have a conversation about things they like, things they prefer over other things. And then here's another one where the teacher has a series of emojis across the top, and the students each pick which emoji represents how they're feeling. And then she gives them a sentence frame across the top. I feel blank today because blank, and then they have to write their name. Notice how the teacher wrote a sample sentence for them so that they know what they're doing. This is a teacher who teaches English language learners. And so you would write one about yourself. So I feel excited today because I get to see my students. And now the students fill in something about how they're feeling and tell why, right? And again, you might put a little expressions box off to the side to give them some expressions they can use when they're filling it in the target language. Here's another example of a daily check-in where you just make a Jamboard with a whole lot of sticky notes, and the students change the word name to their own name, and they change the color of their sticky note based on how they're feeling. So if they're happy, they're changing it to yellow. If they're focused, they change it to green, etc. Think about how then you could drag these all into groups together, kids that all have the same feelings, and then begin to talk about why. Here's another example of a daily check-in. This is also on a Jamboard where they were doing weather. And so the teacher asked, what makes you feel sunny? What makes you feel cloudy? And notice students were putting up sticky notes, pictures, all kinds of different ways to represent how they're feeling. And then they had conversations about it. This is one of my favorite things I've found lately. Now it actually is in Spanish, but I translated it off to the right for you. So this teacher calls it her 4 Ps of today. And so as students exit, they think of 4 things: something positive that happened today, an apology I want to make, a problem I encountered, and a person I want to highlight. And so again, this just builds that positive class community and also gets students to express things to you about what they felt like they did well today, etc. And this is an example of a virtual bulletin board where the teacher has hung up student work. So we want to make sure that even the remote students know that their exemplary work is being recognized in some way. And so he just created a background, like a slide that he puts up behind himself. And then he put screenshots of the students' work behind him. And that's making students feel good about what they did in terms of the products they created. I love this idea. This is actually from Google for Education. You choose the student to be the student of the week, and they create their own slides. So they put their picture in the middle, and then they put some other pictures on there about things they like. To, you know, like I like soccer, I like pizza, etc. And then their friends go on and they put positive messages on there. So you'll see that student 2 wrote, "You're awesome." Student 3 wrote, "You're great at soccer." Student 4 wrote, "My favorite food is pizza too," right? And so it's kind of highlighting a student each week, and they get to hear positive things from their classmates about them. And the classmates use things that they know about their friends from getting to know them in their comments. So if you're wondering, where in the world am I supposed to find all these things, Leslie? I have put all of those in a folder for you. So if you go into your folder for today, and you'll see a folder within it called Community Building Resources. I have put all of these examples in there. Now you'll see they're all JPEGs. You are going to have to recreate them, but at least the ideas are there. And now you can just spin off of those ideas. And so take a look at those things if you want to try out some of those ideas. And also don't forget about the Slidesmania, because they have the templates as well for you. So next, let's talk about incentives. And a couple of you talked about incentives when we talked about participation earlier. So what incentive could we give students in distance learning and blended learning? So they might be able to choose the background behind you. So what's going to be behind you? So they get to pick a picture from the target language country or something like that. They get to pick what the brain break for the day is going to be. They get to have a virtual lunch with you if they're remote students. They get to be the class DJ and choose the song that's going to play at the beginning of the class. They might get to choose where the next virtual field trip's going. They might get a positive message sent to their parents. They might get to be the teacher one day and start off the class instead of you doing it. You might be awarding them digital badges, which, you know, online you can give them like little sticker type things for different recognitions. So notice that none of these are about you get extra credit on your next test, or you don't have to do your next homework. Instead, these are very affective, right? They're very much more about socializing and affective aspects and not about numbers and grades. But you want to think about what would be good incentives for your students. So you have to think about the level you teach, teaching elementary, middle school, high school, or higher ed. What would be engaging for them in terms of incentives? So again, on this slide, you'll see that I have a question at the bottom that says, what additional incentives would you add to the list? And I have a little chat box there. So I'd love for you to take the time now. Let me know, what would you add to this list in terms of other possible incentives you might give your students? What can you add to this list?
So there is a question, how do we create these walls? Yeah.
Which wall? What are we talking about?
I think the walls.
So that was just a Google slide the person created, and they took a screenshot of each of the students' work and then put them as JPEGs on the so as images behind them, and then he just projects them as his background. Good question. Mm-hmm. Gift cards. Oh my goodness. Homework passes. What else? Ice cream treats. Personal videos and project them. Hummus competition. Mimi, that's so cool. I love that. Anybody else? Any other incentives you might think of in terms of things that would be engaging? Choose what game they're going to play today. You guys get to pick. Do you want to play Gimkit? Do you want to play, right? Videos. You get to be the classroom artist today. You get to be the team leader. You get to pick a funny story. You get a complimentary call to your parents. Love it. You guys are coming up with great. Student assistant in class. Class time monitor. Positive feedback to your parents. Birthday dates. Now, by the way, in my classroom, anytime it was your birthday, we sang happy birthday to you in the target language. And then every student went around and said something positive to you in the target language. And it's the one day a year, every kid gets to hear from every one of their classmates something positive. And we teach them how to do that, obviously, if they don't have the language to do it. If your birthday falls in the summer, we celebrate your half birthday, so 6 months different. And that way everyone gets a chance. And it's such a great thing that the kids look forward to, that they're going to kind of be special on that day. 5 minutes at the end of class to socialize, share a cultural aspect. You guys are coming up with great ideas. Earn coins. Ooh, that's cool. Choose a few students to be the co-hosts. Oh, very cool. Making an Arabic calligraphy card for the students whose birthday that is, and they give it to the student. They ask the birthday child a question, like, what's your favorite food? What's your favorite book? So they get to know more about their students. Awesome. Share your hobbies. Show and tell, I know, has been a big thing for young students. They like being able to show their favorite stuffed animal or their favorite toy or something like that. Awesome. You guys have great ideas. Thank you. Okay. I think because we're now at 10:02, I promised that we would pause about every hour. And so let's go ahead and do a break. So it's 10:02, and we're going to break till 10:15, if that's okay with you. So we're going to have about a 13-minute break.
Yeah, that's fine.
And so please take the opportunity to get up, to move around, to grab a snack, to grab another cup of coffee, to walk outside for a few minutes. And we'll see you back here at, am I saying this right? 10:15.
10:15, right? Correct.
Okay?
Yes. Okay, thank you.
Awesome. See you then.
Awesome. Good.
And fun. And here we are back talking about participation. So let's keep going. So next we want to talk about some of the instructional approaches I might take to participation. So we want to make sure, remember earlier we talked about student voice. So making sure we're incorporating student voice where they're making choices of some sort. I can use an online tool like Wheel Decide or Wheel of Names to randomize student participation. I'm going to show those to you in a second. Make sure that when I'm doing grouping, sometimes I group remote students with the live students, with the face-to-face students. And that way, they don't always feel like two separate groups. You know, people are calling them Zoomies and Roomies, right? So the kids in the room are the Roomies and the kids on Zoom are the Zoomies. So we want to make sure Zoomies and Roomies are also working together. They're not always separated. We also sometimes want to make sure that we're grouping active participators with more reluctant participators, because then they have the student model or example of what it sounds like to do the task in the target language. Every once in a while, we're handing the lead over to students, and that's actually something you all talked about in your successes and challenges. We want to survey students to find out what their interests are. Use wait time. So if everything in our class tends to be super rapid fire, we have to be careful with that because the remote kids feel like they can't keep up. And so to make sure that we don't just call on the face-to-face kids because they're the ones I see right in front of me raising their hands, but make sure I'm taking a little bit of wait time before I call on someone so that all students, whether they're remote or present in the classroom, can have a chance to participate. And I want to make sure that I'm having discussions with kids because that's what they want to do. They want to talk with each other about whatever the topic is. And so making sure that I'm implementing discussion routines for my students, and I'm going to share some of those with you in a second. So this is an idea that I found online that I love. We talked last time when we met back in July about giving students choices, but this is an example of giving students choices of their workspace. So let's say that they're doing a task on their own, and they get to choose, do they want to stay in the main room with you because they can ask you questions, you'll still be there? Do they want to go into a group room with others and be able to ask each other questions while they're working on the task? Or do they want to go into a room where no one's going to talk and it's going to be perfectly quiet? So that's another example of choices beyond some of the other choices we've talked about in the past. Here are the examples of those two wheel selectors. So one's called Wheel Decide, one's called Wheel of Names. You just input your students' names around the outside of the wheel and you click on it, and whoever's name comes up is the person who's going to participate next. So it makes kids pay attention because they don't know if they're the next one coming up. We also, as I said, want to make sure that students are feeling like they're using what they're learning in a discussion. And so when I have discussions, I want to make sure I'm picking a topic that's interesting to them and they get to express some kind of viewpoint or opinion, because that's what they want to talk about. They don't want to just talk about what they read. They want to talk about what they think about it, right? Because students love to express their opinions. And so the idea is we want to make sure that there are norms for discussing. So what are our rules for when we discuss? We take turns, we listen to everybody. What are the rules? So we need to establish those norms, or otherwise one kid might commandeer the entire discussion and the others will just listen. We want to provide scaffolds and supports for students to encourage them to do the discussion in the target language. And we want to give them some sort of process or strategy. Now, this is key. People have students go into breakout rooms, they say, okay, discuss this. And the students are sitting there quiet because they don't know what to do. If we give them a process or a structure to follow, we have a higher probability that they're going to actually try to participate in the discussion. So here are some examples of some discussion routines or norms. And so you see on the left, this is for discussion posts. The one on the right is for a regular discussion. So what have we all agreed to? We're going to prove that we're listening to each other. We're going to respect each other's ideas. We're going to build on our friends' ideas. We're going to be prepared to change my mind, etc. So what are your guidelines or norms for your discussion routines? So here's something I call the formula. And what I mean by that, it's a way for you to think about how can you give students the ability to think about what all the parts of the puzzle they need when they do a discussion. So imagine that you're going to have the students look at something like an infographic or a poem or something like that. So that's your authentic text. So the question is, which instructional strategy are you going to add to that? So that could be something like, okay, what's happening here? I lost my pointer. There it goes, hopefully.
Sometimes if you stop sharing and go back, it would be helpful.
Yeah.
And then you lose it. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Oh, I'm sorry. I don't know what's happening here.
It happens.
Anyway, as I'm talking to you, let me go ahead and let you listen to me while I'm trying to figure out what's happening here. So the idea is that I want to come up with a strategy they're going to follow for the process. So what are they doing when they, let me see if I can go up here to pause the share. Okay, nice. I'm kind of stuck. Let me see. Okay, let's try again. Thank you. Awesome. So what do I mean by instructional strategy? So that might be a discussion strategy. That might be a cooperative learning strategy. That might be an interpersonal strategy, a presentational strategy. So when I have you do a discussion, I'm going to give you a process or routine to follow. Then I'm also going to give you some kind of scaffold or support. So I'm going to give you a graphic organizer or a list of expressions or some sentence frames. Because if I have all these parts, I have a higher probability that you're actually going to participate in the discussion. And so what are all the pieces of the puzzle I can put together to be sure that they're going to feel competent and confident to do the discussion? And so I want to go back to my virtual word wall. I want to go back to my expressions list. Okay, if I'm having them express opinions, what list of expressions am I giving them to use while they're doing their discussion? And then what routines am I giving them? What discussion protocol or process are they using? And you'll see here just from this screenshot, there are ideas like fishbowl, bounce cards, say something, discussion webs. There's so many different discussion routines that you can choose from. And so when I'm thinking about having students participate in a discussion, I want to go back to the formula. I want to think about what am I having them talk about? So that's the context, or in this case, the authentic text. What strategy am I having them use? And then what scaffold am I giving them to use while they have the discussion? So I want you to think about a unit you're doing right now. And I want you to consider a discussion routine that you might use for the students to talk about whatever your topic is currently. And so whatever you're talking about now, whether that's the environment, whether that's food or healthy eating or whatever your topic is, what I'm going to have you do for a couple minutes is I want you to go on to the page that's here on the bottom of the slide. It is on your web links page in your folder, and you're going to scroll down till you see this chart. This chart contains a whole lot of different discussion routines. If you see a discussion routine you already know, just skip it. And the idea is that you're going to walk away with some new routines your students can use. Now, as you're doing that, I want you to think about, okay, so I'm talking about healthy eating with my students. So I want to use this discussion routine, and they're going to talk about this topic. And this might be the scaffold or support I'm going to give them to use while they're doing this discussion. So I want you to think about those different parts. So I'm going to pause for a second. It's now 10:26. So let's take about, I don't know, let's say 7 minutes. So we'll stop at 10:33. And I want you to take a few minutes to look at some of these discussion routines. So you can go onto your links page in the Google Drive folder, or you can copy the link off the screen here, or if somebody wants to put that in the chat, and I will go there with you in a second so you know how to navigate the page. So your goal is to find some new, let's see if I didn't link that. Let me go over here so I can show you the word wall. So here's my links page. And here's the virtual word wall. So now I go on to this word wall, and I'm looking for a, here it comes. I'm looking for an expressions list that I want the students to use while they're in the discussion. So I'm going to look through here and see, this is one on how to express your disagreement, right? And so I'm looking for a particular kind of expression list that's going to help students while they're doing this activity. And so I'm thinking about, oh, here's one to agree. So I want them to practice agreeing with each other. So then I'm going to pull this particular resource, and that's going to be the scaffold they're using. See this one down here in the bottom? I might just pull this one that says, in my opinion, I think that, I believe that. That's all good, right? And so the idea is, how am I making sure they have what they need? Because what we know about our especially novice learners, like level 1 and level 2 learners, is that they don't know what to do next. They're like, you'll give the directions and they'll say, yeah, I understand. And then when they get into the breakout room, you visit the breakout room and no one's talking. And so how can we ensure that they are doing what we're asking them to do? I want to make sure there's a routine they're following, and I want to make sure there's some sort of scaffold. Now, I also might give them a scaffold that is a graphic organizer. So then if I go to the Pinterest boards, and you're going to go to the one that starts with an R for reading. And you'll see I've started a section on there for Arabic. And these are some of the graphic organizers I've collected in Arabic. And so the idea is that could be the scaffold. It doesn't have to be an expression list. It could be a graphic organizer they're using as they're interacting with each other to capture ideas or write down ideas before they have to talk to their friends. And so again, this is all about giving students the supports they need for them to persevere through the task and not say, I didn't know what we were doing, so I didn't do anything, right? And so making sure. The other key point to this is that when we have students do things on their own or in groups, I want to make sure I do lots of modeling. So what we mean by that is that I actually play out an example with them before they head out. And I say, okay, so in other words, here's what that might sound like in your room. And so you play that out for them. You show them how they would use the scaffold or support. You model the discussion routine they're going to use. In fact, the first time you use a new discussion routine, it might be something you do as a whole class. So the students are used to using the routine before you have them try out that process in a small group or pair. And so thinking about how I can ensure that students are actually going to participate in the discussion. Okay, let's keep going. So now let's talk about actual participation strategies that are out there. So I heard some of you do polling, and so that's a great thing. So do polling or surveys, polling within your Zoom or your Google Meet or whatever you use for your platform. Having students do gestures. So it doesn't always have to be an oral answer. There can be other ways to respond. You could use something like a hold up, which I'll show you what that is. Whiteboards, and it can be just a piece of paper the students have that they write their answer on, or they can take a page protector and slide a piece of paper inside and make their own whiteboard, and then they hold it up to the camera, right? Cameras on and cameras off, which I'll show you in a second. Physical movement. Stand up, everybody. Step left if you agree. Step right if you don't agree. Like, lets them move. Using something like talking chips. Using programs that give you feedback like Pear Deck and Nearpod. Using collaborative documents like Jamboard, Padlet, Google Slides. And doing a check every once in a while called, Are You There? I just observed a virtual classroom in New York City the other day. And the teacher, when she called on a student, immediately she said, John, are you there? Right? Because she can't see their face, so she's not even sure they're actually there. And so how can we every once in a while pepper in these are you there questions to make sure students are paying attention? So here are some examples of those low-tech participations. Teach them a bunch of hand signals. So if they use 2 fingers, it means I have something I want to add. 1 thumbs up means I have something new I want to say. Obviously, raising their hand means I have a question. Going like this, I agree. You can make up your own thing. But the idea is students can be doing that all along without having to say anything out loud. The second picture is obviously a student with a whiteboard. The third is an example of how students can use their whole body to participate. And on the right-hand side, you'll see an example of a hold up. So this is where students have like emojis or letters or something on a piece of paper, and they hold up the one that represents how they're feeling or what their response is. So if they feel happy about something, then they pinch beside the one that is happy to express how they're feeling. Here's a great idea I got from my friend Megan Budke, who works in Minnesota. She does activities where the students turn their cameras on if it's true, and they turn their cameras off if it's false. So that's part of getting them to turn their cameras on. Say, okay, I'm going to describe something. If it's the right description, turn your camera on. If it's wrong, turn your camera off. And so getting students to practice turning their cameras off and on, hopefully that gets them to want to do it more often. Okay, accountability. We want to make sure that students feel accountable for participating in our classes. We don't want them to think that we're not paying attention to the fact that they're not participating. So we want to have some sort of norm. So for example, do you have norms when students go into partners and breakouts? And so what are the rules? Every time I send you to a partner activity or breakout activity, we go over our norms. Unmute your mic. Everyone should participate. Ask and answer respectfully, et cetera, et cetera. So we want to make sure that they know what we believe are the rules or the norms we're going to go by when we do certain types of activities. And that will cause more students to participate. Have students actually self-assess their participation. So once a week, once every 2 weeks, you might have students fill out a form like this, where they choose whether they have been participating actively every day, do they volunteer, do they contribute meaningfully? And then at the end of this survey, they say, what I'm going to do next week to improve my participation. So you're putting it back on the students for them to know that they need to participate, not because we are trying to force them to participate. Another thing we can use with our students is something called a talk score. This is particularly good to use in groups where the students give themselves or each other a score based on the letters of the word talk. So did they participate in the target language? It's the T. Were they accurate? And notice accurate doesn't mean no mistakes. It means were they understood when they were participating? Did they listen and react to their friends' contributions? And were they kind, meaning they helped out somebody who was stuck? And again, this is a way for them to feel responsible that they're participating and not for you to have to monitor that. And then another idea is to make sure we're giving class jobs to students. And that way they are participating because they have a role to play. So some of the roles that people are doing in hybrid learning right now are things like a welcomer or greeter. So that person is responsible for welcoming everybody as they enter class. There's a chat or discussion moderator. There are group leaders. There's a link master. That's the person who's always responsible for putting links in the chat. There's a sound engineer who's paying attention to whether everyone's hearing okay. And there's a note taker for students who are absent to know what happened in class. And so you can change this list up as much as you want. Each day you can change up these roles so different students have different roles each time, and that way they are participating. So I think we talked a little bit about this last time, about when we're doing parent small group work, we want to pay attention to 4 things. What is the task? What is the process? What are the supports? And what are the products? So this is very similar to the formula I showed you earlier. And this is in your folder if you'd like to access it later. So did I give them a concrete task to do where they can complete it during the time I'm giving them? What supports am I giving them? So again, am I giving them an expression list, a graphic organizer? What process are they following? Are they using a discussion strategy, a reading strategy? And then what do they have to produce? And so that's in that last box of, Do they have to contribute to a collaborative document or to like a Padlet or something like that? What is it I have to show I've done at the end of this small group or pair work? So there's lots of things that are out there right now that people are using to make sure students are participating in these pair and small group works. So one example is giving everybody in the group a role. So you see from this slide, each person has a role like leader, technician, timekeeper, scribe, and presenter. And notice that across the bottom, there are some sticky notes and the students put their name where their role is. And so they're responsible for being the leader that day or the timekeeper that day or whatever it is. And we would encourage students to switch roles each time so they're not always being the timekeeper, for example. This is one of the most brilliant things I've seen in a while. This teacher created a slide for parents. This is a small group task where the members of the team put their names across the top of the slide. So you see team member 1 is in the turquoise box. Team number 2 is in the lilac colored box. Team number 3 is in the yellow box. Then all the parts of the slide that match their color, that student is responsible for. So we're not having one student fill out everything for everybody, but each student has a part of the task that they have to do themselves to contribute to the group. And I love this strategy because then it makes students feel accountable for their participation in the group. If you're interested in knowing where I found those group roles and that last slide I showed you with the team member colors, they are from a person's website called mrspark.org. And this is on your web links page. She has a page on our website that's /free. And they're all things you can download from her website. And you'll see the this or that there in the bottom, like the basketball and soccer I showed you earlier. The group work roles are there. She has so many things she offers for free. She also sells things on Teacher Pay Teachers, and that's a whole other thing, but she offers so much in the free area that to me, it's so worth checking out. Okay, I think I'm gonna skip that right now and come back to it. So 3 things that teachers are doing to make sure students are still there. One is called flood the chat. So the teacher sets a timer. So let's say there's 30 seconds on the timer, and they give a question or prompt or an image or something. And when the teacher says go, the students are trying to flood the chat with as many responses as they can before the time runs out. So that gets kids to want to go, okay, let me see what I can put. I can add this, I can add, right? So that whole idea of just doing it as fast as you can. Padlet flash mob is the same, except it's on a Padlet. So you give them X amount of time. And somebody said here, like the length of a song. So you turn a song on, and by the time the song's over, you have to be done. And they have to add as many ideas to the Padlet as they can based on the question prompt you gave them. And then one I know lots of people are doing right now, and they call them different things: waterfall chat, cascade the chat. I also heard it called a chat bomb the other day. So what you have students do is they all fill in an answer in the chat, but no one hits enter. So they just wait, everybody has it, and then you say go, and they click return or enter, and they all show up at once. That way students see what their other friends wrote that were similar, and also students can't copy something they saw their friend right ahead of them because they all show up at once. So again, a great way to check in with students and say, okay, I'm checking in. Are you still there? Are you paying attention? And then here's a slide that a person just puts inside their Google Slides presentation for a class. And they just have one that is called attendance check. And so all of a sudden, when she goes to the next slide, it says, attendance check, are you there right now? Say or type in the chat box, I'm here. And you can have them do it in target language, obviously. But again, it makes students feel accountable that they are present and paying attention. So I want to pause for a second. And you see here, I have a question on the slide and also a picture of the chat box. I'd like you to tell me, are there other things you've done to try to make students feel accountable to participate in class? So I'm going to open up the chat so I can see some of your ideas. Okay, what have you done to try and have students feel accountable for participating? Any new ideas beyond the ones I just shared? By the way, I'll be making a PDF of my presentation and putting it in our folder. So if you need to refer back to any of these things, you can.
And we are going to post it on our website too. So
Awesome.
we have usually the presentation and then a link to the recording and a link to all the materials that you provided. Thank you very much.
Fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Any ideas before we go on? Okay. Using my pointer. Pear Deck for accountability. That's great. Near pod reflection. You know, Pear Deck has actually created whole slide presentations around social emotional check-ins and things like that. What would you tell your parents you learned today? I love that. I also have had students do, what would you tell a student who was absent today about what we learned, right? And so they have to summarize. Call a specific name to answer the question. Exit ticket. Feedback about the class at the end. Do a Google form at the end. What else? Great ideas. Oh, I love it. A chart with their picture where they're sitting and you mix it up and they have to fix it. Do you feel guilty for not participating? Oh no, you're using the guilt. Exit ticket. Awesome. Okay, and so that's just trying to make them feel accountable. So we're not trying to police them all the time about whether they're participating. They feel responsible. I love Dana's talking about giving them time to think, right? So that, and it says number in line and let them know that each one will answer exit ticket. Now, a strategy I used in my physical classroom that you can use by using the chat feature or by doing a private message is if I had really reluctant, struggling learners in my class who are afraid to participate, I would talk to them privately and say, okay, today when we do this task, I'm going to ask you number 4. And so we pre-arrange with each other which one we're going to, which one I'm going to call them on so that they know to be prepared. And so they feel really confident in front of their friends because they knew ahead of time that they were going to answer that question. And so there's little things we can do like that that build relationships with students and also help them know that we understand that they feel more shy about participating. And so what can I do to encourage that? Thank you so much for sharing. Now, all of these ideas are on a poster, which is in your Google Drive folder. So let me go there real fast with you so I can show you what I'm talking about. So if you go into our Google Drive folder, you're going to see this poster. And it actually ends up being a Google slide presentation. So once you load it, you can click present. And then all the links inside of it are live. So for example, if you wanted to look at holdups, so if you click here for holdups, it's going to take you to a page on my Pinterest board called Nonverbal Signals for Active Listening. So there's lots of ideas there, but on this first one that looks very blank, I want you to click on the first one. And this is where I found that emoji one. So this is from Shelby County, Tennessee. And you'll see that they have ones in Arabic for emotions, like and dislike, processing cards. So these are all possible yes cards, no cards, etc. So if you click on that link, it'll take you to this big, this page that has tons and tons of uploaded what we call holdups. And so if that's something of interest to you, please take advantage of that. Let me go back. Okay. If you are interested in finding out what talking chips are, you can click there. If you're interested in looking at the Are You There check-ins, you can click there. Student self-assessment for participation. If I click here, this is that list of statements where students respond with the emoji of the level of their participation that day, and there's a series of questions they answer. You certainly can put this in the target language if you like. Let's see what else I referred to that you might want. Here's a list of class jobs. So if you click here, it's going to take you to a Pinterest board that has lots of different examples of class jobs on it. And so you can grab ideas from there beyond the ones that I shared in our presentation. So you'll just see that that particular document has lots and lots of links in it that you can follow to get to some of the resources that I referred to as we went along. Okay, so just to let you know, like if you want to find Wheel Decide and Wheel of Names, things like that, you can just click within this document. All right, awesome. So I want to stop for a second. We have spent a lot of time talking about participation. So I want you to go into the chat and I'd like you to name 3 key words you're walking away with from this first part. So I'm going to open up the chat and I'd love to hear from you. What 3 big ideas are you walking away with today about increasing student participation in our blended and concurrent learning? What are 3 key ideas or words? Active student engagement. Okay, so trying to keep kids active and engaged using a lot of these strategies. Thank you. Scaffolding tools. Don't forget that we want to give them support so that they feel like they can do it. Student voice and choice, interactive, collaborative, assigning jobs, positive learning environment, holding students accountable, accountability. Accountability again. Create that positive community. They already renamed Zoomies and Roomies. That's awesome. Voice and choice, community building, discussion norms, student engagement and accountability, giving choices, inventive ways to use Zoom tools like camera on, camera off. Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. So that's the idea here, is I want you to feel like you're walking away with some things that you can implement right away. And with everything, I love going to conferences and learning online, but you don't want to show up Monday to class and look like you're totally different than you were before, because the students are going to say, did you go to a conference or something, right? And so you don't want to totally shift your whole personality as a teacher. You want to take the ideas I'm sharing with you today that you think will have the highest impact on increasing student engagement and increasing student learning. And you carefully select the ones that you think will work best with particular student groups you teach. And then once you try them out, you evaluate whether they worked well or not for you. And that's how you decide whether you're going to adapt them a little bit. Are you going to keep them right for the future? And so I'm encouraging you to really think that through. I think I had originally had a break here, but I think I'm going to go on because I think we can wait till quarter after. So now I want to move to concurrent learning. So this whole concept of teaching kids simultaneously. And this is such a juggling feet for people, right? I'm trying to juggle kids in the room, kids not in the room. Can they see me? Am I standing in the right place? Am I not paying attention to the remote kids? Like, what's happening? So again, we're going to talk about 4 big ideas: relationship and community building, lesson planning for concurrent learning, station rotation, and playlists and choice boards. So those are the 4 big ideas we'll talk about in this next segment. So let's start with relationship and community building. Now, here's what we know. We have been like a bouncing ball. We went from face-to-face to remote to hybrid, now concurrent, and then we're probably going to go back to face-to-face again. We have been bouncing around so much between learning environments. And when this all started back in March of last year, I really tried to help people see, like, don't feel like you're waiting this out, that this is a waste of time until you can get back to normal. But instead, I want you to see it as an experience we've had, that we've learned things about our learners. We've learned things about what engage our learners. So here's the question I want to ask you. What will you keep? So from all the experiences you've had in this remote learning and hybrid learning, when you eventually go back to fully face-to-face, what are you going to keep in your repertoire? What do you realize you want to keep doing because the students, it highly engages students, it gives you good information about students learning, etc. So here's what I'd like you to do. If you have a January through April birthday, I'd like you to go to the first link. And they're all exactly the same, except the first one has no number, the second one has a 2, and the third one has a 3. If your birthday is from May to August, I'd like you to go to the second link. And if your birthday is from September to December, I'd like you to go to the third link. You're going to go to a Padlet board. And what I'd like you to do is think about, what are you going to keep now that we've had all these experiences in all these different learning environments? When things go back to, and I always say normal with quotes, because I'm not sure it's ever going to be completely back to the way it used to be, but what are you going to hold on to because you realize it really engages students and students really enjoy those types of activities? So if you'll grab the link that you need for your particular Jamboard. So I'll pause for a second. I know my moderators have those links too. Now you might question, why did
They
I
are the
divide you all up?
corrected. They are corrected. Are they? I see it different. It's a study choice. These are so
Right. This is something different. Yep.
Yeah.
You might notice that, why am I sending you all the different Jamboards? That's because Jamboards have a maximum amount of people that can belong to them. And so I'm making sure that I spread you all out so that everyone can participate. So if you're wondering why I'm sending you to different ones. So if you'll go on to your Jamboard and reflect on, what are you going to hold on to that you learned about student learning through the remote and hybrid experience, that when you go back to the face-to-face classroom, you're going to keep?
There is a question there about how you make your shorter the bit.ly. So
yep.
Yeah, we can walk you through it.
Sure, you just go to bit.ly.com and you put in the link, and then you can customize the back end of your link. So it has to start with bit.ly, but then I just customize it so that it goes with what it is I have you doing instead of a bunch of letters and numbers. Okay, awesome. I'm glad you asked that question. So I'm going to go to the Jamboard to see what you guys are coming up with. Let me open all 3 of them. Okay. You're going to keep some of the technology. I'd love to hear specifically what. Like, are people really liking the Pear Deck, for example? Is that something you're going to try to hold on to?
For me, I would like Jamboard and Padlet, Edpuzzle, and more of the Flipgrid. Yeah.
Yep.
I will keep Flipgrid at puzzle near pond.
Checking in with students. I love it. Jamboard, word wall, Flipgrid. What are you going to keep?
Kahoot. Somebody's saying Blockade.
Emojis. Padlet.
Seesaw. Yeah, Seesaw is very good again.
Seesaw, particularly, I hear lots of elementary people have been using Seesaw.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Gimkit is good.
Gimkit people love as well.
Mm-hmm.
What else? Oh, I didn't put it in there. Okay. Thank you for sharing. So let's talk about exactly what we mean by concurrent instruction. So what we mean by concurrent instruction is that teachers are teaching students in person and virtually at the same time. It is not the same. Hybrid is a wider version. Hybrid could be you're teaching some kids synchronously and some kids asynchronously, right? And so some people are calling this high flex, meaning flexible. Students are Zoomies and Roomies. You want to try to create one classroom community where they feel connected to each other. Virtual experiences, students want to interact with their in-person peers, and there is a challenge about the virtual students feeling left out because you're physically in the room with the in-person students. And so that's a challenge that has to do with that. And so when we think about building relationships in the classroom community of concurrent learning, we want to consider certain things. And I know this is little, but what you're going to notice is these are really similar to some of the ones I shared earlier about participation. And so making sure that students feel heard, making sure I'm checking in with kids, right? And so we want to make sure that we're being intentional about building relationships and classroom community, and that we are paying attention that the remote students are not feeling left out in any way, because it's so easy for them to feel like the extra kids, right? Instead of being part of the whole group. And that is the hugest challenge for us. So some of the ideas on that poster that I just shared with you are similar to the ones that we looked at earlier. I want to make sure that I have all voices heard. So that's why it's good to have a chat monitor, because if you're distracted by other things, if there's a student who's paying attention to the chat, they'll say, oh, Mrs. So-and-so has a question, right? And so you want to make sure there's somebody who's paying attention so the kid doesn't feel like they're not being heard. I want to assign kids buddies or teams. So assign a remote kid with a face-to-face kid and have them check in with each other once in a while. So that way they feel like they have a contact in the class who is their buddy of some sort. We talked about the informal meetups. We talked about the showcasing of their work. Here's one: collect feedback from all students about which task and activity type most positively impact their learning. So of my 27 years in the classroom, 21 of those were in middle school. And if I asked middle school teachers, what are your favorite things we do in class? My middle schoolers would have said nothing, right? And so we don't want to ask that. We want to ask, which of these types of activities we do in class help you learn best? So does it help you to work with a partner in a breakout room? Does it help you to play the interactive games? Does it help you to write? And so have them, again, feel accountable for knowing what's helping them learn the language. And make sure you're not calling on the face-to-face students more than you're calling on the remote kids. So just heighten your awareness around that, because again, it's so simple to call on the kids that are closer to you because you're seeing them, and making sure the kids that are remote don't feel left out. And so when we think about lesson planning having to do with concurrent instruction, this is very challenging. And I don't expect that you can read this whole thing, so don't squint and try to see it. But the idea is that I've created some examples of planning templates that you can use for concurrent learning. So quite a few people are doing now what's called block scheduling, where they teach a whole 90-minute period to students because they only see them twice a week. And so I have suggested ways you might put your lessons together. And so when you're planning for concurrent learning, not only do you want to have some kind of lesson template, and again, I'll show you where this is so you can access the template and all the links, but you also want to think about, what do I need to pay attention to in each of these segments as far as the face-to-face students and the remote students. So take a look at this screen. As I look at each of my lesson segments, so let's say my lesson hook, that's the first thing I do. So I show a little video, or I show a meme, or I show a picture, and then I want students to respond to it in some way. On the far right, I have questions there about, well, what considerations should we be making for the face-to-face students? What should I be thinking about for my remote students? So the whole concept here is we want to be thinking about, what do I need to make sure I include in my directions? What do I want to make sure that I include in my supports, so that both kids in both environments feel like they can do that task? And so that's what, when we're doing concurrent instruction, one of the key strategies is, as you're thinking about the different phases of your plan, what do I need to pay attention to for my face-to-face learners and for my remote learners during that segment of the lesson? So
there is
here's what we're going to
question
do.
here. I'm
Yes.
sorry. There's a question said, should we put the setting at Zoom on speaker mode so the online students can appear on the screen?
That is probably the best thing to do, would be to make sure that they feel present by being projected in some way. And so that's how we did it in our school system before COVID. We did distance Chinese learning, and we had the kids' faces projected so they all felt like they were seen in the classroom. The challenge there is not everybody has the technology to do that. And so if you have the technology set up to do that, that is ideal. If not, then I know people have been doing the thing with 2 screens. I mean, there's so many different ways people are approaching this right now. So I'm going to have you go into breakout rooms in a second. And what you're going to do is you're going to go on to the slide again that matches your breakout room number. So if you're in breakout room 3, you're going to go to slide 3. And on there, you're going to see one segment of a lesson. So you see the example here on the screen is the lesson hook. So for this lesson hook, you're going to see around the outside there are some sticky notes. I want you to pull the sticky notes onto the slide and write some things you would consider for your in-person students and for your remote students during this segment. So I want you to think of, what do I need to be aware of? What do I need to be conscious about when I'm doing that particular phase of the lesson? Okay, so we're going to go to a bit.ly called Concur Left Seg, which refers to concurrent lesson segments. So I'll pause for a second so you can get that. And then when I stop sharing, people can start going into breakout rooms, find the slide that matches your group, and then put ideas on the sticky notes, drag them onto the side of what should you pay attention to for your in-person and your remote students when you're doing that particular segment of your lesson.
And please make sure that you received the
So I think when we're talking about breakout room work, or we're talking about discussions and things like that, we need to keep ourselves anchored in the proficiency descriptors. So what do the necessful, ACTFL, can-do statements tell me about what a novice mid can do? So they can generate words. They can generate lists, for example. They could label something, but they're not going to speak in very, very long paragraphs. So if I want them to have a conversation, and these are novices, I'm giving them lots of what we call sentence framing. So I'm giving them the beginnings of sentences to start out what they want to say. I'm giving them sentences that have blanks in them that they're going to just plug in the vocabulary words or the content words we've been learning. And then I'm going to give them little extra phrases. Like I'm going to give them phrases like, no way, I agree, right? And so just little what we call conversational fillers that make them feel like that they're simulating an actual conversation. So it's not something where they're just saying a single word at each other, because that's not how real people talk. So that's why I'm such a huge believer in having these expression lists and these sentence frames, because the students can lean on those to say, well, wait a minute, let me look at what she gave me. I think I can try to say something here. But the big piece for me, when we talk about different proficiency levels and also age levels, is all about what do I know a student at that proficiency level can do? If I ask a novice to analyze or synthesize something, they're not going to be able to do that. And so what is it that I know they can do so that I could show, for example, the exact same commercial in the target language to my level 1, 2, 3, and 4 classes? What's going to change is what I'm asking them to do with it. Right?
I agree with you. I have I agree with you 100%. And then I call it like enrich environment, language environment. Like I increase their language environment when I give them more vocabulary. So basically, it's not for me. It's not something I do with it.
And
I agree with you. They don't need to know with isolation. No vocabulary with isolation. It has to be within a sentence, to understand how it really counts. 100%, I agree with you, and that's what I do, even for my vocabulary list.
Okay.
Okay, I think.
And I think it's also very key that when we're thinking about having students do something, that it's something that is close to real world as possible. I was working with some teachers the other day from Massachusetts, and one of the things the teacher told me she had students doing is walking around the room, asking each other what color their shirt was. Well, when would you ever do that in real life? I can see what color your shirt is. I'm looking at you. And so we want to make sure that it's like, all right, so let's say we're talking about our hair and how we look and all of that. It would be natural for me to say to a friend, how do you think I would look with curly hair, right? That's an actual thing I would say. But I wouldn't walk up to my friend and say, I have straight hair. Well, of course you do. I can see you do. And so making sure what we're having students do reflects a real world interchange that they would have with others. And regardless of whether they're beginners or advanced, they can all do that. What's different is the level of scaffolding and support at the lower levels. I can make novices sound intermediate, but it's because it's been heavily modeled for them, tons of examples and lots of scaffolds. And so all of these things can be adapted no matter what level you teach, no matter what age group you teach. You just have to think about what can they do with the language they know now. So let's move on to the idea of station rotation. So this idea is very big in the concurrent learning. So if you do any kind of research into this idea of having zoomies and roomies at the same time, one of the ideas that comes up is station rotation. Station rotation, in essence, is like doing learning centers with students. So if you've ever done learning centers in your classroom where students rotate through a listening center, a writing center, a reading center, et cetera, very similar, but there are different aspects to the concurrent learning version. Obviously, all kids would be online together because we would be mixing the face-to-face students with the virtual students at the same time. So the idea is that we would first of all, you don't do this every day. You would do this like once a week or once every other week. And there would have to be norms established. So when you're going to move to the next station, or I'm going to play some kind of music, or I'm going to give some sort of bell or something that you're moving to the next thing. you know you're going to be in the breakout rooms for certain stations. You're going to be self-assessing whether you're participating well, right? So we need to have all these norms in place. Anytime you do anything new with kids, we need to establish, here are the rules we follow. Here are the norms we follow. We cannot assume. For example, I would never ask kids to give each other feedback on their work unless I gave them examples and we had norms for it, or otherwise kids can be pretty mean to each other, right? And so we always have to norm these things and give lots of examples. So we want to make sure we're modeling these things. They've got scaffolds and supports. We're designing the station tasks so they can be accomplished during the time I'm giving them. There need to be processes that students are using to submit the work that they did in their station. So is that in their interactive notebook? Is that through the learning management system like Canvas or Schoology? And there's always a need help link for kids. So if they are doing something and they need to call for help, there's a link they can click or personally directly chat the teacher, and the teacher can come help them out with whatever they're doing. So the whole idea is that there are going to be students, and I heard you all say earlier on the first thing that we brainstormed on, the successes and challenges with parent small group work, is that we have students all along the continuum. So we have struggling learners and students who are barely learning, and we have kids that are soaring. And how do I differentiate for this? Well, station rotation is one of the examples of how things do this, because I can have some kids working independently, but I actually can pull a group to work with me by themselves. So I have 5 kids and me, or 4 kids and me, depending on how big your classes are. And so that's your chance to, I've noticed something about this particular group over the last several classes that they need certain gaps filled in. And I have created this group today because they're the ones I want to do a targeted lesson with, just with this small group. And also it allows you to differentiate for the different groups. So when you design these station rotations, you want to design the small groups based on the needs that your data is telling them that they have. And you want to plan these mini lessons that are responsive to those gaps. So one of the stations in the station rotation is the teacher small group instruction. So 3 different groups are going to rotate through with you, and I'll show you the model in a second. And you've customized something. So if you have heritage speakers in your classroom, if you have advanced learners in your classroom, you're going to put them together in a group and do something more challenging with them when it's their private time with you. Whereas if you have struggling learners, I have designed a separate mini lesson for them when I get them together, because I need to work on their vocabulary, or I need to work on them creating sentences on their own, or whatever it is they need help with. So one of the models that I have for you, and there is a link to this in your webinar links document, is there's models you can use when you design this small group instruction. It's very different designing instruction for a 15-minute segment with just a small group of kids than it is making a whole lesson, right? And so one of the models that are out there is called STEPS. So you set up, you teach, you engage, you practice, and then the kids show you they know. So you do all of that in that short 15-minute period. You'll see also on the right-hand side, the blue poster, there's a second model called Reading Workshop Mini Lesson. And I've given you templates there and ideas for how would I put this together if I wanted to do a small group instruction. While some kids are doing instruction with you, others are doing small group work. So that would be like your typical breakout room activity. And so you're designing tasks that have those task supports, processes, and products. They might be using some sort of strategy, like a discussion strategy or a cooperative learning strategy. They have to be sure, you have to be sure they're accountable for their participation during the small group work. And there's some accountability, like what did they create as a result of the small group work? Was it a Google slide? Was it adding to a Padlet? Was it adding to a Google Sheet? Like what was it that that group was responsible for? And then the third group are kids that are working independently. And they're choosing something off of a playlist or a choice board, which I'll tell you what those are in a second. And the idea is that they have a specific task they're working on during their 15 minutes. And so for 15 minutes, I might be working on a task by myself. For 15 minutes, I might be with the teacher in the next 15 minutes that's working with me on something I need. And for my last 15 minutes, I might be working with a small group. So it's that idea where you're having kids rotate through these stations. The first time you do these stations, I highly recommend that everybody just does the same station at once. So except for the teacher small group. So everybody practices what it's like to be in the independent work. Everybody practices what it's like to be in the small group. Then you might want to simulate what it's going to be like being in the teacher-led small group instruction. But this is a model that's out there for concurrent instruction. So if you see here on the screen, I've given you a sample way of you might look at this. So you open up the class with about 10 minutes, then you do like a 20-minute whole group instruction with students, and then they break into the station rotations. And you can see there by the color-coded boxes, each group rotates through every 15 minutes. And then you bring everybody back at the end to do a whole group activity. Now, if you don't have 90 minutes, obviously you're going to pare this plan down. So it really depends on the time frame you have. And again, I'm not recommending that you try to do this every day, nor would I have you do this at the beginning of a unit. Because when you start a unit, everybody's kind of at the same place, right? They're all learning the new content. This would be more appropriate, more midway towards the end of a unit, where students start separating in terms of students who have already reached the learning targets and students who are still trying to get there. That's when I can do some of this differentiated instruction. So I have a model for you, or a template that you can use to create these lessons. And again, I'll show you where I put that for you so you can access that if this is something you'd like to try out. Now, what I said earlier is that during the independent work, students might work on a playlist or they might work on a choice board. So let's take a look at what playlists and choice boards are. So a playlist, which sounds very much like your playlist on Spotify, right, where you have a list of songs that you like. Okay, same kind of idea, but these are tasks that students are going to do. And what makes a playlist different from a choice board is that a playlist, the activities have to be done in order. So they build on each other. Whereas a choice board are just kind of random tasks on a tic-tac-toe board that students are choosing to do where they're practicing the content and the structures that they've learned. And so when you're planning these playlists, you want to be thinking about tasks that hit all the different modes. So do they have some things where they're going to interact with somebody else? Is there some that they're going to do something presentational? Are there some of the tasks on there where they're doing interpretive communication? So they're listening, viewing, or reading. I want to mix up the task types. I want to make sure they're aligned to my learning targets for the unit. So what is it you should be able to do by the end of this unit? I can talk about ways that I help the environment, let's say, is my learning target. All these things should be aimed at those targets. And it's ideal to base them on authentic resources. So let me show you an example of a playlist. So this playlist happens to be for a unit on the environment. And you'll see through my arrows there that I have shown you the different types of activities that are on the playlist. So I don't expect you can read this, so I'll read it to you. So there's a scenario. So this looks very similar to a performance task if you're familiar with designing performance tasks or integrated performance assessments. So it says, you've been asked to create a public service announcement for Spanish speakers in this case, but you would have Arabic speakers in your town about ways everyone can contribute to saving the environment. This playlist contains multiple tasks where you will accumulate information to help you create your PSA. So notice the final activity they're doing is creating the public service announcement. All the things they're doing along the way are contributing to getting them there. right? So what are the things that I'm going to have them do to accumulate enough information to be able to create this video at the end? So the first task there is them listening to a music video, and there's some sort of close activity that goes with it. You might know that close activities are where there's the lyrics to the song, but I've eliminated certain words and they have to fill in the words that are missing while they're listening to the song. The second task is an ed puzzle, where they're going to go in and watch this video and answer the questions in the ed puzzle. Ed puzzle, if you're not familiar with it, is usually a video, and then along the way, the video stops and it asks questions of the students, and the students answer those questions, and then they can continue on. They can also re-listen to that part of the video before they answer the question. So it's very flexible for students. By the way, there's also one out there now called Fluent Key. So F-L-U-E-N-T, Fluent Key, as in what you unlock a door with, K-E-Y. Those are ed puzzle type tasks, but they are all just for world languages. And they're also leveled by novice and intermediate. So ed puzzle, has all different content areas on it, not just world languages. The third task is 3 infographics, and they get to pick which one they want to create a survey with. And this is all about ways to help the environment. And then they're asked to collect survey information from their classmates or friends or family, because they're going to use that in their PSA. Then fourth activity, they're going to read an article online in the target language, and they're going to rank the most important to the least important suggestions they make in that article. So you see, over these tasks, they're accumulating information. So then the fifth task is they're going to storyboard out their PSA. So they're going to draw out what they think their public service announcement is going to look like. And then the final step is they're going to record it on Flipgrid. So each day they have independent work time. Students are doing the next activity on the playlist. So you see how these build on each other. Notice how these all are built around authentic resources. So they're not just random tasks, but they're also interacting with the target language in some way. And then they're creating some kind of product. Also notice that I have speaking, writing, listening, viewing, right? So all different kinds of modes that they're using, so that they're practicing in all the different communicative modes when they're doing these tasks. Now, the other idea is to give students, while they're doing the student independent work, we can give them a choice board to do. Now, this is an example of a choice board that is based on authentic text. So again, it doesn't have to just be random activities. It can actually be based on text. And so you're not supposed to be able to read this because it's pretty tiny, but this is a choice board on the theme of healthy lifestyle. And so the top left box is a picture of kids doing all kinds of different activities. And the students are writing descriptive phrases and sentences about the different healthy lifestyle activities they see happening in the picture. First row in the middle is a list of healthy lifestyle choices, and the kids create a survey to find out which ones their family or friends think are most important. On the top right is an article they're going to read, and they're going to list all the key ideas they got from the article. In the center left is a video about saving the environment, and they're it's a song about it, and they're filling in the missing lyrics. Center right is some Instagram posts about things you can do to help the environment, to be a healthy lifestyle, and they're going to gain some ideas from those Instagram posts. The bottom left is a flyer about an event that's coming up that's encouraging people to move more. And so they have to make an invitation to a friend to go to this event with them. The bottom center is a meme, and they have to use that meme example to create a meme of their own that encourages people to have a healthy lifestyle. And then on the bottom right is an infographic that they're going to conduct an interpersonal exchange with a classmate about it and record it. So again, if I went through and labeled each of these boxes, I would be able to find listening, speaking, reading, writing, interacting with someone else, creating a survey. And again, all of these activities on the choice board all are aimed at the exact same learning targets for the unit. I can talk about what it's like to have a healthy lifestyle, but these are the examples of things they're doing on their own. Now, can you only use a task like this for if you're doing station rotation? No, you can use this as a homework choice board, for example. So kids could pick one activity from this board for each night to complete. And again, they're all aligned to your unit targets and your goals for what you want students to be able to do by the end of the unit. So if you're interested, and we talked a little bit about this back in July, I have a page on my website called Student Choice. And again, if someone wants to put it in the chat, you can, but this is on your web links page in your Google Drive folder. I'm going to go there with you right now. And if you're interested in trying to create one of these choice boards, I encourage you to go to this page, because this page has on it lots and lots of ideas of what you might have students do on a choice board. So these are generic ideas. So you see on the right there, one of them is design an invitation. So when you take that idea off of this web page, now you're going to customize it to go with your unit. Design an invitation for someone to join you at a museum, because you've been talking about fine arts in class, right? And so you're just going to customize these. Create a blog post about your family, right? Or whatever the topic is. So take these ideas, and I'll keep scrolling down to show you how many of them are on here. So I've given you lots and lots of ideas here of the types of tasks that you might put into a choice board for students to choose from. And I highly encourage you to mix these up as much as possible and not have them be the same old things every time, because of course students are more engaged by variety and having choices. Now, when I talk about choice boards, a number one question I get about them is around how do you grade choice board assignments? Because if students are doing different things, how am I grading them if students are doing all different things? So it really depends on what the purpose of the choice board activity is. Remember that when students are learning language, the work they produce gives me information about where they are in their learning. So I don't ever expect it to be perfect unless it's an assessment, right? And so if they're doing these things for homework, if they're trying these things on their own without any help, there are naturally going to be some errors that occur, especially if I'm a novice. I shouldn't be graded down for that. Now, this is Leslie's personal philosophy, because I should be able to practice without having risk. Because my knowing that you're just going to look at my work and give me a credit for completing it or whatever, if I need to have that nugget, you know, if I need to get credit in order to do it, but it's giving you, the teacher, information about what you should do tomorrow and the next day because of what you noticed about what I was missing in my learning. And so again, you have your own grading policies, you have your own way that you determine what things are worth. The other thing I want you to think about is that you can grade any of the things on a choice board if they are all aligned to your learning targets based on your learning targets. So through this product, is the student showing me that they can describe their family? Whether that's something they did orally, something they did written, a poster they made, an email they wrote, whatever it was, were they showing me they could do it or not, right? And so if I keep my focus on the learning target, and all these things that I put in the choice board should all be aimed at the same thing, or otherwise, why am I having students do it, right? And so that way, I'm sure that students I'm giving them credit for moving toward the target and not about how many red marks I made on their paper, right? And that's Leslie talking about her personal philosophy. Dana, I think I saw you had a question. I saw
sorry, by
raised.
accident. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Dania?
Yeah,
she
this is
doesn't
Dania.
have. Yeah, she doesn't have it. It's by accident.
No.
She said. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
I want to make sure
There is here Ismail. It's Ustad Ismail. He's saying, what kind of a data are we talking about when selecting small groups?
So when I talk about data, I'm talking about what I noticed about student learning. So let's take an example. Yesterday, students filled out an exit ticket for me before they left class. So they filled it out, let's say, on a Google form. Now, first, I want to make sure I was asking the right kind of question. So I don't want to ask, what are 3 things you learned today? Because that's not aimed at the learning target. If the learning target is, I can describe people, just people in general, and you've taught them how to describe physical characteristics, personality characteristics, right? Things like that. Then the exit ticket needs to be aligned to that. So describe your favorite musician. So they're using the content to talk about what they look like and what their personality traits are. I'm using that data, what I saw they could do in describing, to make decisions about which kids need some shoring up, which means they need some more work with me on how to do descriptions. So I'll plan a mini lesson for them where we're working on descriptions together. So let's take a look at this picture. How would we describe this person? Or let's pick one of your favorite singers or one of your favorite actors. Let's brainstorm all the adjectives we can think about that person. Now let's try to describe that person. So that would be like a mini lesson that you did with this group, because their exit ticket from the previous day told you that they still don't have the skill yet of being able to describe others. So that's what I mean by data. Data does not always have to be hard data. It can be things that I'm also observing. Now, this is harder in the hybrid and remote classroom. In my face-to-face classroom, some of the best data I ever got was walking around and listening in on kids while they were working in groups, because I heard mistakes, I heard gaps in knowledge, I heard all kinds of things that then my brain is going, oh, I should do something about that tomorrow. I'm going to design a learning experience tomorrow where they're going to be able to work on that particular skill. So I look for where the gaps are, where students are making a mistake, a lot of mistakes, and you see common errors happening. And then I'm going to address it somehow by, in this case, designing the small group teacher-centered work. I hope that's helpful. So on this link, and again, this link is in your document, I have linked you to a place that has lots of templates for creating choice boards and playlists. So if this is something you want to play around with, and I'm going to let you do a little bit of work with that in a second, you are welcome to go to these templates. And again, they are linked in your document, or if someone wants to grab that URL right now and put it in the chat, you're welcome to do that, but it is in your document. And it just gives you, I love when I find things like free templates like this, because they're just out there on the world for anyone to use. And I'm not starting all over with trying to figure out how to do this myself. So I want to go back to where you're finding all this stuff. So if you go to your folder for today, and let me find it. And you're going to go to your web links page. So go to the page called Links for Today's Webinar. I want you to go to the link that says something like resources for concurrent instruction. So let me go on this for you so you can see where I'm going. So open the web links, and then I want you to go down to where it says, oh my goodness, where'd it go? There it is. Oh no, you keep jumping around on me. Here you are. Okay, go down to the bottom here where it says concurrent learning resources. So if you click on this link, it's going to take you to a link that says you have to make a copy. And this is the series of posters I created all about concurrent learning, and it has all the links on it. You also can find this on the page, on my website. We click the black bar, they're right at the top, because the most recent things I've collected are always at the top of the page. So if I click present, all of these blue posters that I've shown you screenshots of are here. So there's the whole one on building classroom community. Notice that there's links in there. If you click the links, it's going to take you to ideas. Here's that lesson framework. So if you want to access this lesson framework, please do. Also notice up here, there's a template you can click on. And if you want to work with the template to create a lesson in that format. Now here's the station rotation schedule. And now here's a template for it. So again, use these, and notice all throughout at the bottom, I've given you more links. Here's the example of the playlist close-up. Here's more background information about doing station rotation and lots of links in there. Here's the choice board I showed you earlier. Here's the recommendations for the strategies you would use for the small group instruction. More about station rotation. Okay, and that's it. So you can just go to this series of posters, which in essence are a Google slide presentation I made, and you can access lots of these concurrent instruction links. Also, when you go back to my website, and you click on the black bar right here, resources for the shift, you'll see that I found recent. So the most recent thing I've uploaded is always at the top. This is very cool. It's a virtual engagement framework. And so that's something that I sent out on Twitter, and lots of people are using right now to think about the cognitive engagement, the emotional engagement, and the behavioral engagement of students in virtual learning. So as you scroll down, there are those posters. If you click on them, you can go directly to that presentation I just shared with you. Now, as you go down, here's more resources around concurrent instruction. And then there's a whole section on playlists and choice boards, a whole section on station rotation. And then here's the template, and lots of other visuals that visualize for you what concurrent learning can look like. So I encourage you to take a look at these things I've collected for you. Like here are some sample schedules, and notice how this one separates Zoom and Room into their lesson plan. And so I encourage you to check these things out, because these are all the recent materials that I've put on my website having to do with concurrent instruction. So what I'd like you to do next is just take a couple minutes to, and let me go back to my presentation. I'd like you to take a couple minutes just exploring these ideas around, oops, there it is, concurrent instruction. So you have several choices. You can go onto my website and look at some of the choice board options to put into a choice board and start playing around with that right now. You can take my playlist idea and start coming up with some ideas of how you might put a playlist together. You can just look at the concurrent instruction resources, like the templates I just shared you. This is only going to be like a 7-minute stop because we don't have that much time left, but I want you to be able to take some time right now to just dig in a little deeper about concurrent instruction, playlists, choice boards, station rotation. What are all these ideas that are swimming out there around this? How do I teach kids virtually and face-to-face at the same time? So I'm going to pause for a few minutes just so that you can have some time to explore. So let's see, it is 12:10. So let's come back at 12:20. Is that going to give me enough time? Yeah. So let's do 10 minutes where you get to just explore any of the concurrent resources that I've shared with you. Playlists, choice boards, templates, those posters I made about concurrent learning. Just grab as many ideas off. And the reason I'm giving you this time is I want you to know how to go back to find these later when you need them, right? And so let me pause for 10 minutes. I'm here in this room. So if you want to be looking at things on your own, you can. But if you have questions for me while I'm in this room, you're welcome to ask them as well. Still about another minute to work, but I'm here now for the next couple minutes to answer any questions you have, lead you to any of the resources I talked about. I did write myself a note. I'm going to add the Slidesmania link into your links page, and also the template for the face-to-face and remote instruction that has the considerations off to the side. And so if there's anything else that I referred to that you don't see a link for, I'm happy to add that as well. And then after this is over, I'll add a copy of my PowerPoint to the same folder so that you can have that to go back to as a reference. So I'd love to hear now, either if you want to put it in the chat and I'll have my moderators feed them to me, or if you'd like to ask a question by turning on your mic. I have a few minutes now that I can give to any questions you have. So our big conversation today was about increasing participation and how to engage students in this new idea of concurrent instruction. But at this time, you can ask me some additional questions if you like. So I open up the floor to you all.
We have one question, Leslie. Someone is asking, they have she's teaching non-native speakers, and where many of them, they do not have the spoken skill. How do, she's wondering, how do we start to train them to increase their teacher talking time in target language?
So I think it's good for having students to understand about proficiency. So what we mean by that is, if you're using proficiency-based rubrics or you're using the actual can-do statements, have them see where they are on that continuum right now. So speaking, can I do this? Can I do that? And find themselves somewhere on the proficiency continuum. So, well, I can read and write pretty well, but in speaking, I'm down here at like novice mid. How do I get to novice high, which is one level up? Let me look at the descriptors there. Well, I should be able to start kind of making some things up on my own and not just giving back the things that I learned. And then how do I get to intermediate low? Well, then I should be able to extend my answers a little bit more instead of having little short phrases or short sentences. And have them really look at, what does it take to be, what does it look like to be a learner at that next level? I think that's really key, because we need students to understand that gaining language proficiency is not just the accumulation of vocabulary. It's actually being able to communicate at a deeper, more complex level as I move ahead on the proficiency continuum. Kids need tons of supports. So am I giving them those little conversational fillers that they wouldn't have gotten through writing and reading? And so those little things that real people would say when they're having conversations. Am I having an expression of the day? Am I having a question of the day, where everybody should be prepared to talk about that? Is there a student who leads the discussion every day? So there's a segment of class where they have just a conversation, and there's a leader that day. They're prepared with questions and things to ask their friends in the class to get everybody to talk. But again, all this needs to be modeled for the students. We need to have lots of examples for them, especially ones that are not as sure. This typically happens with heritage speakers, where they're very strong in certain skills areas and not so much in others. And so they feel very competent, for example, at reading and writing, but their speaking is what they need to work on. And we need to show them, well, where would you put yourself on this continuum? And let's see what it is you need to be able to do to move ahead. Great question.
Yeah. One more, how can participation or lack of it affects both forms of assessments?
So I think that it depends on what kind of assessment we're talking about. So proficiency-based assessment is where students show you what they can do in writing or speaking, right? And so they prepare something they're going to say, or they prepare something they're going to write, which is presentational, or they have a spontaneous interaction with someone else. And so that's all about, how are students giving you that product, right? So are they videotaping themselves and turning it in? The old school way to do things like that is teachers would have each kid come up to their desk and do a presentation while the rest of the class is doing who knows what, right? Now we have all of this technology. So how are we having kids record themselves doing an assessment? How do we have them doing a timed writing for us, where there's a timer going and you have to get down all your ideas in the next 2 minutes or whatever it is, and getting them. I know some folks I've worked with lately told me they use Google Forms when kids do their writing, and they lock the form. So when you lock the form, the students can't navigate away from the form and look online at a dictionary, but instead have to stick with just filling in the form that you've given them. And so my advice for that is that first. And second, think about what I said earlier. If students are trying to show me growth in their proficiency in the language, make sure you have them go back and redo a draft. So you tell them, okay, now this final draft you gave me, if I was to grade it right now, you would be at an intermediate low. If you want to be an intermediate mid, go back and try to connect more of those sentences together. Try using more description, add more detail, do this, do that, right? And then they go back and make it even better. For me, that shows so much more effort and growth than separate activities I'm giving kids. And so think about assessment that can happen where students are revising and making it better, like going through that writing process. That's when students are really going to figure out, oh, I should try to do more of this or that. Now, for your information, if you go onto my website and you click on Assessment in World Languages, right here, you're going to find some feedback forms there. So if you scroll down, you see where it says student assessment and feedback. And so let's say that it's a writing performance you had students do. So you're going to click here and you're going to download this document. And these are exactly aligned to the proficiency continuum. So let's say that a student scored novice high on something. So here it is at the bottom. So if they scored novice high on it, here are the things they can do. They can write about themselves. They write in phrases in some sentences. They can write some short messages, etc. Do you want to move up to the next level? On the right-hand side are some examples of things students can do to become the next level communicator. And so keep writing, try to add more information, try to use more variety in your vocabulary. We want to give students specific feedback that helps them know what I can do exactly to make my writing better or to make my speaking performance better. Telling me it was good or that, you know, it's an A really doesn't tell me what I need to do to get to the next level. Here's another one called Moving to the Next Proficiency Level. And again, for speaking and writing, if you want a student in this row to move from novice high to intermediate low, here are some possible feedbacks you would give them to move to the next level. So I would use these types of things with students to help them know that you need to keep making your writing and speaking better and better in order to become more and more proficient. So I hope that's helpful.
Actually, Leslie, is very helpful. I use it all the time in my classroom, just to let you know. It's a lot of the resources that you shared are really great. The rubrics that they are there, just again, that it's easy to use and to adapt to your classroom. So it's wonderful.
Awesome. Any other questions?
I think we are good.
You're good? Okay, so
Everybody's...
here's your exit ticket. Your exit ticket is what's on your to-do list. And so what I want you to do, and I can answer another question in a second. Go to the chat, please, and put in something is, what are you going to do after you leave here today? And don't tell me go eat lunch, but I want you to tell me, what are you going to do with what you learned today? So what's your next step on your to-do list? So as you're doing that, I'm happy to listen to any other questions.
There was here a question saying, any advice on where to accumulate all of our links and work we teacher established in a simpler way than a website? I'm very impressed with all your work collected in a neat way.
So lots of people are currently using a program called Wakelet, W-A-K-E, like wake up, let, L-E-T. And it's kind of like Pinterest, but it's where you can put a whole lot of links on a single board. So you could just call that page whatever your unit title is, and then you can put all the links on that page that just relate to those unit resources. Obviously, Pinterest is something I use. You can use something as simple as a Google folder, right? A Google Drive folder, and store everything there, and then keep a links list like the one I put in your drive today to record things that are links and aren't physical things you can keep inside your folder. So you really have to know what works best for you. Awesome.
Yeah.
So let me take a look at what some of your to-dos are. Looking at my website more, okay. You are welcome to do that. That's why I have it, and I'm constantly adding things. Brainstorm some more strategies with your team. I love it. Go over the website. Find some templates in Arabic. I've been working on that, and if you find some good links, please let me know, because I've been trying hard to add more and more Arabic resources to my website and Pinterest boards.
Well,
Awesome.
actually,
Thank
Leslie,
you all.
just one thing. It's about these links. Just make sure that they don't have typos or mistakes. Sometimes, again, it's for the teachers. It's just be careful. We all try things, and we might fail in, in
That's
one way or
why
another.
every time you look at something, and you have to remember that when I'm saving things onto my Pinterest boards that are language I do not know, I'm using Google Translate to make sure there's nothing about, drugs and drinking and things that I don't want kids to look at. But I don't know about whether the language is always correct. And so you always have to look at things before you use them with your students, even if somebody like me has already curated them for you.
Okay.
So I think we're at the end of our time.
Yes, as a follow-up, Lena and I, we have actually a suggestion for everybody that we can end this session with, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Our thing. So what we are thinking, Lena? Well, sound. Can you unmute yourself?
Yes, what we were thinking that with this all great tools that you provided us, that we want to kind of elicit some ideas and application from these teachers who are great teachers, that we can provide, and the next workshop that will really have the chance to connect and interact and also share with each other. So please, teachers, if you are going to apply any of the tools that Leslie provided us, thanking her so much, and please prepare it, send it to us, and we will select maybe 5 to 6, it depends the timing, and maybe more, and each one of you 10 minutes. Share with us your activity, and that's how we are going to get more Arabic.
Yes.
I
We
love
were
that.
talking about Arabic,
that.
so now we can have this opportunity. That would be an awesome way to really collect, and we will create a Google Drive and we will put it on, or
and then we can host it on our website. Then everybody, you don't have to have hard work. Then it's just like you click the button and it's there for all of you and for all of us. It is a whole group work. So we were hoping to send us that within the next 2 weeks, and then we can organize it, because our next session is going to be in April, end of April.
During Ramadan. So while we are fasting, we'll sit and listen to you.
So we'll satisfy our thirst and hunger through these nice idea and examples.
You will feed us with all your
Yeah.
creativity, inshallah.
I love that idea.
Yeah.
That's
Thank
called
you so much, Leslie.
crowdsourcing.
Maybe we'll send you some so you will post it on your website.
I would love that. I would
That would be
absolutely
good.
love that.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you
Thank you
so much. This
Yeah.
is very rich and very nice. It's always a lot to learn from you. And we have a lot on our plate to go back and process it and apply it in our classrooms. And I'm sure each one of us take at least one or two ideas and apply it and then share it with everybody. Then we end up with multiple ideas and a lot of resources. And this is the greatest, one of the good things, honestly, Leslie, out of this hardship that we are going through this 1 year, it's a lot of resources have been created and
I
shared
agree.
with different languages, across languages, and the same language. Yeah.
Awesome.